Yeah,
What time is it now?
it is 9:56, and I grabbed a short reading, just a welcome message for the fall celebration, so that's perfect.
Olam kasedi mane, yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam kasedi mane, yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam kasedi mane, yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam kasedi vane, yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. I will build this world with love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. And you will build this world with love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. And if we build this world with love, yadadai, 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 yadadai. Then God will build this world with love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam kasedi bane, 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 yadadai, yadadai, yadadai.
Good morning. My name's Kate Pierce-Nims, and I'm your service associate for today's service. This morning, we welcome Matt Meyer to our pulpit. Matt is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist with a long background as a musician and worship leader for UU congregations. Matt lives in Boston but travels as an itinerant worship leader, bringing the good news of Unitarian Universalism to hundreds of congregations all over the country. He serves as the Director of Operations for Sanctuary Boston, a contemporary UU worship community with rock and music and engaging worship that meets on Wednesday evenings online and in person. Matt's children's story, Desmond Gets Free, which we'll hear later today, was published last year as a book by Skinner House Press. It just recently won a Nautilus Award for social justice in children's fiction. To get a copy for a child, a teacher, or any justice maker in your life, you can pick up a copy here in Channing Hall after the service. For our call to celebration this morning, I have a short reading written by Marilyn Fakowski. We welcome you. We know you come here for different reasons, to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of your bigger questions. We hope you will find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. Just as you are welcome here.
As for me in my house, you will find us serving truth. As for me in my house, you'll find us serving truth. As for me in my house, you'll find us serving truth. Truth for all right now. As for me in my house, you'll find us serving peace. As for me in my house, you'll find us serving peace. As for me in my house, you'll find us serving peace. Peace for all right now. As for me in my house, you'll find us serving love. As for me in my house, you'll find us serving love. As for me in my house, you'll find us serving love. Love for all right now. Truth for all right now. Let us make peace for all right now. Our chalice lighting this morning comes to us from Adrienne Maree Brown. I'm going to do a different reading from your usual one. I hope it's all right if I do it on my own. Adrienne Maree Brown redefines success, and she says, "Let us measure success by how many of us can say, 'I am living a life I don't regret.' A life that will resonate with my ancestors and with as many generations forward as I can imagine. I am attending to the crises of my time with my best self, and I am of communities that are doing our collective best to honor our ancestors and all humans to come." Our opening hymn this morning is "Wake Now, My Senses." One of the reasons we don't hear a lot of Protestant hymns on the radio, well, there are a lot of reasons, but one of them is that they don't have sing-alongable choruses. And so we're going to try and work on that this morning by adding a chorus to this song. It goes like this. Oh, oh, can we try that? Oh, more time. All right, I invite you to rise in body or spirit. And for all of our singing today, and there's going to be a lot of it, I invite you to do it in whatever way works best for you. If the words elude you or they're coming too fast and you just want to hum along, that's just as good. If what you need this morning is to just sit in silence and soak in the sound of the room, that's okay too. That's just as good. And if what you need this morning is to dance in the aisles and rock out like you're alone in the car with the radio, this is your morning to do it. All right, let's start with the chorus. Here we go. Again, a little louder. Wake now, my voices, and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving as love shows. Chorus, here we go. Again. Wake now, my reason. Wake now, my reason. Reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise us. Here we go. Again. Wake now, compassion. Wake now, compassion. Give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend. Praying and striving there. We do this in 5-part harmony. Here we go. Let me hear some more harmonies. Again. Wake now, my conscience. Wake now, my conscience. With justice, thy God. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole you embrace. Here we go. Wake now, my vision. Wake now, my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care. Can we hear some more harmonies? Let's add some more rhythm again. Here we go. Last time. Nice. Oh, you all sound good. Let's take a deep breath. You may be seated as you exhale. Today's service is about redefining success as Adrienne Maree Brown would have us redefine it, to root ourselves in communities that are doing our collective best to honor the crises of our time. That means not accepting the world as we find it, as we happen upon it, and imagining a better world, and trying to find a way to move forward even when it's complicated, even when the people are complicated, even when the path is unclear. So I have just the story for you all. Desmond the mouse lived in the most beautiful meadow in all the land. Every morning, Desmond would wake with the sunrise and spend the whole day playing in that beautiful meadow. And every night, Desmond would go to sleep right in the middle of that meadow under the beautiful starry sky above. One night, though, Desmond woke to find that it was still dark out. And so he tried to roll over and get more comfortable and go back to sleep, but something wasn't right. He could hardly move. And his tail was throbbing with pain. Reaching behind him, he felt that there was felt like some sort of huge boulder had fallen just on his tail in the middle of the meadow. So he tried pushing on this giant boulder behind him, trying to push it away. And then he tried tugging on his tail to get loose. And he tried pushing with every ounce of strength he had. And then he tried tugging again with all of his might. And then he tried pushing and tugging and tugging and pushing over and over and over again. And when he was just about out of breath, he saw another animal pass by through the grass. Good news, he thought. It was a tall giraffe. And so he called out, "Oh, giraffe, it seems that some sort of boulder has fallen just on my tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could use your powerful legs to nudge it even just a few inches in the other direction, I could go free." Well, the giraffe laughed at Desmond the way giraffes do. "You silly mouse," he said. "That's no boulder that's fallen on your tail in the middle of the meadow. That's an elephant that's fallen asleep on your tail." Well, that seems like good news, thought Desmond. In that case, if you could just gently wake the elephant and ask him to roll over even just a few inches in the other direction, I could go free. "I don't know about that," said the giraffe. "I mean, surely you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best not to get involved in other animals' business. I find it's best to remain neutral in times like this." "Well," Desmond sighed, "I do not appreciate your neutrality." The giraffe wandered off, leaving Desmond alone again. And so he tried shouting out to wake the elephant as loud as he could, but those giant elephant ears, they were at the way other end of that giant elephant body. He didn't hear a thing. Again, Desmond tried pushing the elephant with all of his strength, and then he tried tugging his tail to get loose with all of his might, and he tried shouting and pushing and tugging and tugging and pushing and shouting over and over again. When he had just about given up, he saw another animal pass by through the grass. This time it was a gazelle, and he called out, "Oh, gazelle, it seems that an elephant has fallen asleep just on my tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could just gently wake him up and ask him to roll over even just a few inches in the other direction, I could go free." "I don't know about that," said the gazelle. "I mean, surely you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best not to get involved in other animals' business when it's complicated like this. I find it's best to remain neutral in times like these." Well, the gazelle wandered off, and Desmond said almost to himself this time, "I do not appreciate your neutrality." One last time, Desmond tried shouting with all of his little mouse voice. He tried pushing with all of his little mouse strength and tugging with all of his little mouse might. And he tried shouting and pushing and tugging and pushing and shouting over and over and over again. So he had just about given up for the last time when he saw another animal pass by. This time it was a mouse traveling through the grass. And when he called out for help, that mouse ran right over and introduced himself. He said, "My name is Nelson. What seems to be the problem?" Well, no sooner had Desmond explained his situation than Nelson ran all the way to the other end of that giant elephant body, and he shouted up to those giant elephant ears at the top of that giant elephant head. He said, "Excuse me! It seems you've fallen asleep on my friend's tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could roll over just a few inches in the other direction, he could go free." Well, the elephant heard Nelson's little mouse voice way down on the ground. But those giant elephant ears at the top of that giant elephant head were just a bit too far away. And Nelson's voice was just a bit too small. And between you and me, the elephant was just a bit too comfortable. He didn't budge. So Nelson thought for a moment, and then he ran back to Desmond and he said, "You know, I think I might have an idea. Stay right here. Don't move." He ran off into the grass, leaving a confused look on Desmond's face. Just when Desmond was starting to get worried again, he saw Nelson emerge back through the grass. But he wasn't alone this time. He had found 3 other mouse friends. And each of those 3, they'd each done their job. They'd each found another 3 mouse friends. And the whole group of them came back through the grass, and the whole group of them ran all the way to the other end of that giant elephant body. And one mouse, she climbed up on the shoulders of another, and another mouse climbed up on her shoulders. And one by one, they made a whole mouse ladder all the way up the back of that giant elephant head. And at last, Nelson climbed up the shoulders of his friends one by one. And at last, he stood right at the opening of that giant elephant ear. And he shouted with all of his mouse voice, "Excuse me! It seems you've fallen asleep on my friend's tail in the middle of the meadow. Roll over just a few inches so he can go free." Well, this time he was just too loud and just too close to ignore. And so the elephant said, and then he rolled over just a few inches in the other direction. Nelson and his friends, they climbed back down and they met up with Desmond, and they spent the whole day playing together in that meadow, the whole group of them together. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who passed away just a year or two ago now, had said that if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you've already taken sides. He said, "You've taken sides with the oppressor. You've taken sides with the powerful." And Archbishop Tutu said that if an elephant is standing on the tail of a mouse, the mouse will never appreciate your neutrality. Archbishop Tutu believed in a God who, he said, took sides, a God who took sides with the widow and the orphan and the oppressed everywhere. As Unitarian Universalists, we may or may not share a belief in that same God, but we have covenanted to build a world of justice and equity and compassion. And that means imagining and working for a world very different than the one we see around us today. And so that means we have to come together in communities like this to do together what none of us could have done alone, to take sides for justice and to take sides for equity and for compassion. And it means that we come together in community to side with love. May it be so, dear ones, and may we make it so. Our reading today also speaks of a different kind of success. It comes from Brad Aaron Modlin, and it's called "What You Missed That Day You Were Absent in 4th Grade." Mrs. Nelson explained how to stand still and listen to the wind, and how to find meaning in pumping gas, and how peeling potatoes even can be a form of prayer. She took questions on how not to feel lost in the dark. And then after lunch, she distributed worksheets that covered ways to remember your grandfather's voice. And then the class had a discussion about falling asleep without feeling you had forgotten to do something else, maybe something important, and how to believe that the house you then wake up in is truly your home. Now, this prompted Mrs. Nelson to draw a chalkboard diagram detailing how to chant the Psalms during cigarette breaks, and how not to squirm for sound when your thoughts are all that you hear. Also, that you have enough. So the English lesson that day was that I am is a complete sentence. And then just before the afternoon bell, she made that math equation. She made that math equation look easy. The one that proves that hundreds of questions we have and feeling cold and all those nights spent looking for whatever it was that you lost and one person, they all together, they add up to something. I invite you to take a deep breath together. To be present in this place where for now, at least, there is nowhere else you need to be. To take a deep breath together. Be present in this time, this moment where for now, at least, there is nothing else that needs to be done. To be present with your own heart, your own body, and with each other here in this space made sacred by your presence. And let's share a minute of silence. One of the things that can get in the way of making the world better is trying to make the world perfect. For some of us, perfection can be the enemy of the good. And we know that the world is a complicated place and the path is unclear. And so I think this song invites us to sit in that discomfort of trying to live our values even when things are complicated. And it's almost all call and response. So you can repeat after me. It goes like this. Forget your perfect offering, forget your perfect offering. Just ring the bells that still can ring, just ring the bells still can. There is a crack in everything, there is a crack in everything. This part goes a little faster. That's how, can we try that again? That's how the light gets in, that's how the light gets in. And the last part is the one part where you do something just a little bit different than I do it. I say, that's how the light gets in. That's how the, what do I say? Your part is, that's how the light gets in. Let's try that. That's how the light gets in. Forget your perfect offering. Forget. Just ring the bells that still can ring. Just ring the bells that still. There is a crack in everything. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. All right, I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Again, if you just want to hum along, this is a good time for it. If you want to try out some new harmonies, this is a good time to do it. And if you want to rock out like you're alone in the car with the radio, or with some dance moves, is the time to do it. Here we go. Forget your perfect offering, forget your perfect offering. Just ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, that's how the light gets in. Forget your perfect offering, forget your perfect offering. Just ring the bells that still can ring, just ring the bells that still. There is a crack in everything, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, that's how the light gets in. Forget your perfect offering, forget your perfect offering. Just ring the bells that still can ring, just ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, that's how the light gets in. Forget your perfect offering, forget your perfect offering. Just ring the bells that still can ring, just ring the bells that still can. There is a crack in everything, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, that's how the light gets in. Forget your perfect offering, forget your perfect offering. Just ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, 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 that's how the light gets in. Nice. Let us measure success by how many of us can say, I'm living a life I don't regret, a life that will resonate with my ancestors and with as many generations forward as I can imagine. I'm attending to the crises of my time with my best self, and I am of communities that are doing our collective best to honor our ancestors and all humans to come. Adrienne Maree Brown adds a similar question. She goes on to say, how can we, the future ancestors, align ourselves with the most resilient practices of our species? Now, I grew up just outside of Chicago, and I moved to Boston in the year 2000. I still live there. I moved there in 2000, though, to attend college and get a degree in hand drumming, of all things. Anyone else with a hand drumming degree here? All right, it's just me then, I guess. I was following this dream I had at the time. I wanted to be a touring musician. I wanted to travel the world with some incredible band and play in a different city every night of the week to crowds of thousands. In my last semester of school, after 4 years of work and preparation, I was spending a lot of time imagining this musician's life ahead of me, wondering what form it might take. And in that last semester, one morning, I walked into one of the percussion classrooms in the basement of the building, where the drum department always is for some reason. I stepped into this classroom and two of my professors were speaking to each other, and one of them was talking about his schedule. He had just finished a 2-week concert tour of Morocco, playing with some incredible Middle Eastern band. And he was just stopping off in Boston before he went on another 4-week tour of Europe with a group called Simon and Garfunkel. Oh, you've heard of them? Yeah, me too. He pointed at his suitcase, which was sitting open in the corner of the classroom. This guy was living the dream. And that suitcase to me was just the ultimate tangible symbol of success, of someone on the road living that dream I had. I was so excited to just even hear about this that I kind of interrupted their conversation and I said, are you so freaking excited that you can't even stand it? And yeah, I said it really just kind of like that. No chill, to be sure. He just looked at me though and he shook his head and he said, man, I'm tired and I just want to go home and see my kid. He taught during the week in Boston, but he lived in Ohio and he just commuted back and forth when he wasn't on tour. Now I'm going to be honest with you. In that moment when he said that, what I thought was, I didn't say it, but what I thought was, surely your kid is not as cool as Simon and Garfunkel. I didn't say it though, and I was embarrassed by how tone deaf I had been to this conversation that I had interrupted. That open suitcase had just a moment ago been the ultimate sign of success, but it carried a very different weight now. This teacher, this musician, knew the value of music as well as anyone I have ever met. The value and power of music to transform hearts, to connect people, to ground them. But he still struggled to balance his love of music and his work with his family and relationships and community. My unfolding sense of true success now, of a life well lived, is first that it is a journey and not a destination, and that it is second an increasing embrace of our values, even in the midst of increasing complexity. This reminds me of a poem called Famous by Naomi Shihab Nye. She says, "The boot is famous to the earth, more famous than the dress shoe, which is only famous to floors." I want to be famous, she says, in the way a pulley is famous or a buttonhole, not because it ever did anything spectacular, but because it never forgot what it could do. Remembering what we can do, even in the midst of all that must be done, is our work as the future ancestors. Rabbi Tarfon said something similarly thousands of years ago in the 1st century AD, speaking in his own tradition. He said, "It is not your responsibility to finish the work of perfecting this world, but you are not free to desist from it either." Now, when I think of success, I sometimes, recently at least, think of this useful term that millennials have coined, the word adulting. A word to celebrate the victories of small things, to celebrate the days when one accomplishes both the shopping of the groceries and the laundering of the laundry, maybe even all in a single day. Just getting by is hard enough in this world we live in. But still, in congregations like this one, we who have covenanted to live for justice and for equity and compassion, we know that success in its true sense is more than just checking off to-do lists, and it's more even than professional acclaim. My hope for my days and for yours, friends, is to attend to the complexity of our times with our best selves, to root ourselves in communities doing our best to honor our ancestors and future generations to come. This is the work of we, the future ancestors. My hope for us is to set aside the overly simplistic stories we have been told about what success is supposed to look like, about who we are or who we are supposed to be. To set aside the overly simplistic stories about what our gender is supposed to mean, or what kind of work has value enough, or whether systems of injustice are tolerable just because they are normal. Growing up at any age is about growing into our values, about adapting to complex times with grace and with courage, and about remembering what we can do even in the midst of the overwhelming list of all that must be done. And when I think of redefining success to align more deeply with our values, and when I think of movement ancestors who lived into the crises and complexities of their own times, I sometimes remember this story about our Unitarian ancestor, William Ellery Channing. Channing was a preacher in Boston in the mid-1800s. He is remembered as one of the great founders of Unitarianism. He was hailed as a model of religious leadership, and he was dedicated to justice, and he was a powerful voice for abolition in his time. But we know that success is more about the journey than the destination. And that was even true for Channing, who wasn't always so vocal in his opposition to slavery. It's not that he didn't always agree with the goals of the abolitionists, he did, but he was just put off by some of the characters in the movement. They seemed a little too emotional to him, and they reminded him of the overly passionate itinerant revivalists that were sweeping the country at the time. Now, you should know that the only constant in my life since college is my job as an itinerant revivalist, but that's okay. I don't take his comments personally. So one night at an anti-slavery forum, Channing showed up and was complaining about the movement, about the imperfect people and the imperfect organizations they had built and how they were going about things, and the movement and all of the things worthy of criticism about it. And eventually, Samuel May, a more active abolitionist, a leader in the movement, had been listening all night to Will criticize the movement before he just couldn't take it any longer. He broke in, interrupting, and said, "Dr. Channing, I am tired of these complaints. It is not our fault that those who might have conducted this great reform so much more prudently than we have left us to manage as we may. It is not our fault that those who might have pleaded for the enslaved so much more wisely and eloquently than we can have been silent. We are not to blame, sir, that you have not spoken. And now that inferior men have begun to act and to speak against what you acknowledge to be an awful system, it is not becoming of you to complain of us because we do it in an inferior style." This is what the kids would call a sick burn. So sick, in fact, that Channing was unable to answer. And he said, "Brother May, I have been silent too long." I love that this story depicts the very moment that Channing took up the work of a life that would resonate with his ancestors and we, his descendants. The very moment he took up the work of attending to the crises of his time, not to finish it, but neither to desist from it, to take on the work that was his to do despite the complexity of working with imperfect people in an imperfect world. I love this story because I so often feel like I'm in the place of Samuel May, where I end up fighting so-called allies who say they agree with my values, but would rather criticize the work, criticize the movement from afar, than get scuffed up in the fray themselves. And I love this story also because I'm just as often in Channing's place, to be honest. Too many times I have blamed other people's failures and other people's shortcomings for my own silence. And too many times I have delayed action, leaving my human family to suffer for the sake of some abstract sense of moral purity. We should be cautious when we criticize our ancestors who were trying to figure out the complexity of their own times, dealing with the own crises that their communities faced. It can feel overly simple to know the end of the story looking back with 20/20 vision. But we should remember that the 13th Amendment that eventually outlawed slavery in the United States left an exception for those who had been found guilty of a crime. And then suspiciously, our country accused and found more people guilty of crimes than just about any other. The United States is less than 5% of the world's population, but we keep more than 20% of its prisoners. And just recently, the ACLU wrote a report saying that just last year, forced labor in US prisons generated $11 billion worth of goods, while paying out an average of 13 cents to 52 cents per hour for those forced to work. Perhaps Channing had missed that day in school when the teacher explained that the hundreds of questions we have, the real questions we have about how to go about our days, that they still add up to something, even when simplistic answers are elusive. Our children will someday tell similar stories of us, beloveds. Stories of a time when the world was changing fast, when the headlines were dramatic and unpredictable, when climate chaos arrived with devastation in our cities and neighborhoods, and a time when premeditated wealth inequality made it difficult to address the crises we faced. They will tell of a time when we put our neighbors in cages by the millions, by putting them there for nonviolent offenses. And they will tell of how we institutionalized segregation, even for our children, by funding schools with local taxes based on segregated housing wealth. I hope, though, our children will have more stories to tell. I think they will also tell the stories of Black Lives Matter that changed the conversations about racial justice in this country. I hope they'll tell the stories of Me Too and the movement that changed the conversations about gender equality. I hope they will tell of the Sunrise Movement that popularized the idea of the Green New Deal, that brought that idea from the margins to the center. I hope they will tell of those of us who came together even when the people were complicated and the path was unclear, those that covenanted to never forget what we could do, even in the overwhelming list of all that must be done. The work of we, the future ancestors, is a journey and not a destination. And true success, we know, is an increasing embrace of our values, even in the face of an increasingly complicated world. Ta-Nehisi Coates, the writer and atheist prophet, spoke of this. He said in a letter to his son, "History is not solely in your hands, and still you are called to struggle, not because it assures you victory, but because it's what assures you an honorable and sane life." Now, there was a time when I thought success was traveling the world with some famous band. And between you and me, if Paul Simon called me up this afternoon, I'd be on the next plane out of here. But now I know that success also means finding a way to support your family, even when the minimum wage is too low and healthcare costs are too high. Success is finding a way to sit with your beloveds when they are grieving, to just sit and be with them, and face the difficulties, the complexities of this world, even when we don't have answers about them. Success is finding a way to make the world better, even when there are more questions than answers about it. And love, which is the beginning and the end of the story of Unitarian Universalism, means acting for compassion and for justice, even when the people are complicated and the path is unclear. Honorable struggle that Coates spoke of means taking up the work that is ours to do, not to finish it, but neither to desist from it. And so, beloveds, let us live deeply into the journey we will not regret. Let us aspire to the fame of the boot and the buttonhole, never forgetting what we can do. Let's love each other deeply, building up the messy and beautiful and holy communities that make this life worth celebrating. And let's come together to do together what we could not do alone, to build a world of justice and equity and compassion, even when it's complicated. May it be so, and may we make it so.
Before I introduce the offering, we need to note that with the exception of OWL for grades 8 and 9, Sunday morning programming, for that I need to skip all of this because we don't have Sunday morning programming today. So thanks for bearing with me anyway. An important way that we celebrate life each Sunday is by offering an opportunity to practice generosity. Members and friends support our congregation with an annual pledge paid throughout the year. Another way to support the good work of this congregation is by making a generous contribution as we pass the plate or via one of the options shown on the next slide. If you are joining us virtually today on Zoom, you can click on the tiny URL link in the chat window to contribute, or you can send a text to the number shown on the screen. The examples on the slide show how to label your text to indicate the amount and purpose of your gift. We must now say goodbye to our Facebook friends. Consider joining us on Zoom next time or visit us in person at 405 Washington Avenue, Albany. You can find more information at albanyuu.org. And I'll leave Matt to introduce the offering.
I learned this song on my way to a protest of an immigration detention center in Boston. We were traveling there to shut down the detention center for a few hours at least to put some stones in the machinery of our immigration system. And a dear friend of mine taught me this song that we sang as each person was arrested one by one. While we were there, one of the officers came out and said, "Do you realize that you are blocking the entrance to a federal immigration facility?" And it was so affirming. I spend so many of my days just staring at my computer and sending emails, and no one ever comes up to me and says, "Do you realize you accomplished all the things you meant to accomplish today?" When I think of our justice system and our immigration system, it is striking to me that when someone comes to the United States seeking asylum, that the legal path forward for that is to go directly to jail, to go to prison, and wait for your paperwork to go through. And it is a sign of the depths of racism in this country that is not true for very many other federal programs. When I take a mortgage interest tax deduction, I don't have to wait in jail until the paperwork for it goes through. But when someone comes from Ukraine fleeing war there, they wait in prison until they can pay the ransom, the bond, and wait for the paperwork to go through. And when I sing the song, I think particularly of my housemate Benjamin, who was tortured in Mexico and came to the United States to find safety. And our response when he arrived here legally, when he went through the legal application process to be an asylum seeker, was that he had to spend 6 months in prison until eventually they kicked him out because he was organizing his fellow detainees against the system. And they said, "Everything seems to be in order. You can go away now." Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. Listen, my people, we bring the power. La libertad es la única bandera. Liberty is the only flag. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza, la libertad es la única bandera. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. No human being can ever be illegal. No human being can ever be illegal. No human being can ever be illegal.
Good morning, friends. My name is Jacob King, and I am here today on duty as Pastoral Care Associate. Also on duty today is Sandy. Where are you at? Sharon. There we are. Right in the back. Wave your hand. Perfect. So both of us are on duty. This is the time set aside in our service to share a joy, our sorrow, our personal significant milestones in our lives. There are several ways to share on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you may click on the raise hand symbol. The technician will call on you to unmute and share your joy or sorrow. Those in Community Hall will be able to come forward and select a stone to place in the bowl on the table. If you wish, you can share a joy or sorrow at the microphone. Please also considering your joy or sorrow after the service with one of our pastoral care associates. We'll begin by reading items that were submitted this past week. That'll be followed by the spoken joys and sorrows on Zoom and finish with any joys and sorrows to be shared from Community Hall. On the MMT side, do we have any submitted joys and sorrows?
No, we have none pre-submitted.
Perfect. Anyone in Zoom raising their hand wishing to share a joy or sorrow?
Yes, we do. Let's start with Kristen Abbas. Here we go.
Hi. It's weird, I'm in the library.
Welcome.
I just want to give people an update. I know lots of folks are aware that Ben has been struggling with some pretty significant health challenges, both with a herniated disc in his back and with some 4-year now long-term post-concussion syndrome symptoms. So just wanted to give people a heads up that he's going to be having back surgery, an S1 L5 laminectomy on February. So if people could just send some positive energy there. He is medical, everything, horrified and he'll need just a lot of grace and peace to get through the next couple of weeks here. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing. Do we have any other raised hands on Zoom?
No others. Thanks.
All right. If you would like to, you may now come down the aisle to do a stone, and we will have the microphone right here. Thank you, Dawn. Dawn will take the mic. If you have a significant joy and sorrow that you would wish to share with this beloved community, you may now come down. And if you wish to stow, you are now invited to come forward. If you wish to speak, you can stand with the usher.
This morning, I'd like to share both a joy and a sorrow. My coworker recently has celebrated the birth of his second daughter. She's happy and healthy. However, he was denied coverage for the medical expenses of the birth due to some bureaucratic nightmare. And I'd just like everybody to keep him in your thoughts. Thank you.
Over here.
Good morning, everyone. Life can be such a mixed bag, can't it? I am happy to tell you that for the first time in my life, I received a Valentine.
Aww.
Thursday, I got, one day late, a bar of chocolate. And so, I guess I'm still one of the young old.
Aww.
Good morning. I'm Al DeSalvo. This week's been one of a couple of losses. One, a dear friend of many years here, and a particularly close friend of my late wife Susan, but also mine when I first came here to Albany in 1985. Paul Richer died recently after about a year and a half of serious illness. He was a remarkable man and an incredibly good actor too. I'm sure that some of you have seen him in various plays around the region. And the other was my daughter Rachel's father-in-law, who had been seriously ill for about 2 years. And after just a day in hospice, he died a couple of days ago. So I'm thinking very much of him. He was a great guy.
As I select a stone on behalf of those joys and sorrows that are left unspoken, let us hold all that we've heard and felt in our hearts.
I invite you to take a deep breath, to be present again in your body, in this place, to join me in a spirit of prayer. Spirit of love, be with us as we are with each other this morning. We bring our whole complex lives here to this place, to this community. We offer up our sorrows that in the sharing our burdens may be lightened. We offer our joys to each other that in the sharing they might be magnified. Some of us arrive here this morning filled up with the blessings of this week, and we gather in gratitude. Some of us arrive here this morning feeling the loss of loved ones, those struggling with illness or with loss. We arrive with a hole in our hearts, the shape of those we miss. Some of us, since we last gathered, have questioned our faith, whether in God or in each other or in ourselves. May we find a sense of stillness. May we find a peace that might have eluded us all week long. Love, be with us as we're with each other this morning, holding the grief and the gratitude all together, holding the sorrows and the celebrations all together here in community. Love, be with us as we're with each other. Amen.
We'd love to get to know guests and visitors to our service. If you'd like to tell us who you are and where you're from, Those in Community Hall are invited to stand or raise your hand. Our usher will bring you a microphone so that everyone in the room and online can hear you. Those joining us on Zoom can click on the raised hand symbol. Our multimedia technician will invite you to unmute and introduce yourself. You can also click on the visitor link you'll find now in the chat window. Do we have anyone here in Community Hall who is a guest or visitor who would like to introduce themselves? We have one raised hand.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Amanda. This is my partner, Zach. I'm a longtime UU, and we just moved to the area, so we're excited to join the community, and this is our first time here, so nice to see everybody today.
Welcome. And Chris, do we have any raised hands on Zoom? Oh, we have another one in Community Hall, just kidding.
Oh, hi, thank you. My name is Jerry, and my family and I are here today just to check it out. And thank you for letting us participate and listen. It's very lovely.
Welcome.
Well, we have a raised hand, so we'll go to Michael Crowell, who is not particularly a guest, but he has something to say. Go ahead, Michael.
Hi, this is actually Paul Simon. I'm visiting my good friend Michael Crowell here in Albany, and I've really been enjoying the service. I like your congregation a lot. I haven't met. I heard what your guest minister said about going on tour with me, but my joy is that I'm going to be settling in Albany and setting up a band here. I would love it if he would join me. And I hear that there's a congregation nearby that's looking for a minister. So just think about it.
Well, thank you, and welcome to all who have joined us today, including Paul Simon. If you'd like to learn more about our congregation or Unitarian Universalism, you can stop by the table in the lobby to speak with our friendly welcome table host, who I think today is Amy Lent, and she is particularly friendly. On Zoom, you can find in the participant window someone with welcome before their name, or anybody on Zoom. We're an incredibly welcoming crowd here, as I'm sure you already know. You can reach out to that person in the chat window, and there will also be opportunities to socialize and welcome newcomers after the service, both for those on Zoom and those here in Community Hall. And I'd also love to draw your attention to Matt Meyer's book, which is available in Channing Hall as well. There is a sign that can show you how to use Venmo or what to write a check out to for one of the books as well. And I would also like to draw your attention to the announcements printed in the order of service, and that will be on the screen at the end of service today. And next, if I could invite Sigrid Newell up for a community announcement. I can bring it down.
My name is Sigrid Newell. Today, the coffee hour is being hosted by the Flower Committee. So I'm here to tell you a bit about the Flower Committee. We all have special celebrations in our lives. Bouquets for birthdays and anniversaries, corsages for special events and weddings, flowers for loved ones who have passed but live on in our memory. What do you have to celebrate? The Flower Committee would like to help you with that celebration. You've seen notes in the order of service as today. Today actually is this flower arrangement celebrates the birthday of the chair of the Flower Committee, Cindy. So anyway, whatever celebrations you have, there is a paper on the wall of the bulletin board between the two doors in Channing where you can sign up for your special date. On that date, or before that date, someone from the Flower Committee will contact you and find out who you're celebrating and what was special about that person that they could incorporate into the flowers. Maybe your mother's favorite color, or somebody's preference for formal or informal or wild and crazy. These things the flower committee will help you do to make an arrangement, especially in honor of the person. And then you pay for the flowers that the person purchased in order to do it by adding to the flower committee fund. Or if you like to arrange flowers, we'd love to have more people on their committee. We have 52 Sundays of a year that's got to have flowers up there. And so the more people that share the job, the easier it becomes for all of us. And we have lots of fun. We go on special trips sometimes to see botanical gardens and flowers and cathedrals and all sorts of things. So join us if you like to. And so while you're having some of the nice goodies that we have brought, meander over to that sign-up sheet and put your name on it so we can make some flowers for you. Think of each flower arrangement as a little hallelujah. We're going to have lots of hallelujahs in this congregation.
Dear ones, may we go forth aspiring to the fame of the boot and the buttonhole, living our values of compassion and justice and equity, even when we have more questions about it than answers. May you go forward in honorable struggle, even when the people are complicated, and the people are always complicated, and even when the path is unclear, because the path is always unclear. May you go forth in peace and go in love and go and be blessed as you are each a blessing to others. Our closing song is Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Would you repeat after me? Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. That means the world will be built with loving kindness. And I love that there's something Unitarian Universalist about this scripture and that it doesn't quite specify whose job it is to do that building. So we might imagine that the job is ours. It goes like this. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, 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 dai. 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 It's the whole thing. Let's try it together. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, 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 dai. And Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, 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 dai. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, 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 dai. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, 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 dai. Please rise in body or spirit. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, 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 dai. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, 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 dai. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, 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 dai. Olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Here we go. Olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, yadadai. Olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. I will build this world with love. I will build this world with love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. And you will build, and you will build this world with love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. And if we build this world with love, yadadai, 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 then God will build this world with love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam, olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. 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 A little faster, here we go. Olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. 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 One more time. Olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, 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 yadadai. Olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam, olam chasedi bane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Amen.
As we extinguish the chalice, please join us in the words shown on the screen, printed in your order of service or in your memory. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Those on Zoom are encouraged to join a breakout room for conversation and fellowship. You can click to accept the breakout room assignment when it appears on your screen. Those here in Community Hall are invited to attend coffee hour with delicious snacks provided by the Flower Committee. We especially encourage guests and visitors to join us for coffee and refreshments. We are so glad that you joined us today. This concludes our service.